Hello and welcome to Beyond the Bites, a show that deals with the trending issues of the region. Earthquakes are always terrifying. The slightest of tremors send us running towards safety. Well, a 5.3 magnitude earthquake recently hit Assam and parts of northeast yet again, giving rise to fears of a disaster caused by earthquakes. So how vulnerable exactly is the northeast, and are enough steps being taken to ensure that the extent of damage and casualty can be limited to the minimum in case such a disaster is to hit the region? To know more on this, we have with us today Professor B.P. Dwara from the Department of Geological Sciences, Guwahati University. A very warm welcome to you, Professor Dwara, to this episode of Beyond the Bites. Thanks for being with us today. I also have with me Mr. Rajesh Datta. Mr. Datta is the technical officer responsible for earthquake risk mitigation program of the Assam State Disaster Management Authority. A very warm welcome, sir. And I also have with me today Mr. Ranil Kumar Das, a senior architect, has been in the profession since 1975, long way, has experience about the vulnerability of structures in the region. So a very warm welcome once again to all of you to this episode of Beyond the Bites. I'll come straight to you, Mr. Professor B.P. Dwara. How vulnerable is the Northeast as far as earthquakes is concerned? This is the first basic question, has been asked again and again. We'd like to let know it from you, and also if very briefly you can explain to our viewers that Northeast falls under seismic zone 5. What does it mean, and how serious it is?
Okay. All of us know that India, this crustal plate is being subducted below the Eurasian plate. And as a result of this collision, we see large number of earthquakes all along the Himalayas. But coming to the northeastern region, we, in addition to this India and Eurasian plate collision, we see that the Burmese plate and India plate collision. India plate is being subducted below the Burmese plate. So this trijunction, our three plates are colliding over here, and as a result, we see that there is more vulnerable in this region. One thing it should be, we should understand that the earthquake, if you see this as a natural event, large magnitude earthquakes comes at large interval of time, and the small earthquakes come more frequently. Like if you see this 8 magnitude or beyond this earthquake in the global situation, that at least one earthquake comes on the average. But if you see about this 2 magnitude earthquake, there's thousands of earthquakes comes in a day. So so much the variations is there. Another one aspect we should see that earthquakes are not occurring all the time with same I mean this hypocentral depth, means focal depth. So sometimes it may be very near the surface, sometimes it may be at a deeper level. So an earthquake of 8 magnitude coming around say 40 kilometer maybe less devastating than an earthquake coming near the surface, maybe say 3 kilometer or 4 kilometer, and it's a 7 magnitude earthquake. That will be more devastating. So zone 5 is concerned, that seismic hazard zonation map of India, which was prepared by Indian Bureau of Standard. So zone 5 is marked on the basis of the earthquake that may occur at magnitude 6 at a focal depth of 3 kilometers.
Okay,
which
so that's how serious.
Yeah, and it can generate a ground acceleration, peak ground acceleration of 0.36 g. So that we consider. Now, when it if you see this say 7 magnitude earthquake, usually at 3 kilometer depth we do not expect a 7 magnitude earthquake, so it will be going deeper down.
Absolutely.
And as a result, again the acceleration will be coming something nearby that. So these calculations are made, and this is a seismic hazard map. It's a general map for the northeast, but we cannot take it as granted that it is, it can be used, this value, whatever is given for zone 5, uniformly all over. Like if you see this Himalayan sector, where earthquakes are of, shallow focus, and geological conditions is like that, so there is possibility of more damage. So that can be made as is a separate zone from the rest of the part of northeast.
Okay. We'll come to more of that in course of our discussion. I'll come to you, Mr. Rajesh Datta, now. Under the prevailing conditions, the kind of urbanization do you have? Is there something really called earthquake preparedness, or is it just a myth that we want to live with?
Thank you. First of all, I just want to extend our sincere thanks to this Any Live for just arranging for this sort of discussion, and it's very very pertinent to discuss this issue. No preparedness is foolproof, as well as it's not a, you can say always there is a scope for betterment of this preparedness. Yeah, we are prepared from our side, and its preparedness is just a coordination between all the departments, starting from this Guwahati Development Department, Urban Development Department. Our department is facilitating other departments just to have coordination among the department, even the response mechanism. So I'm just coming to that preparedness in terms of community level, at district level, and the state level at the final step. And it's basically we are trying hard to have the community prepared about the do's and don'ts of the earthquake, and for this preparedness level at the regarding the built environment, we have done some risk assessment of the built environment. Like for Guwahati city, through this GMDA has done a risk assessment of G+4 buildings of Guwahati city. Some 400 buildings have been done.
Okay.
And basically it's an RVS visual training, rapid visual screening, and we have informed the apartment societies that these are the status of this built environment. And then
so how many have you found, if you can disclose that, how many have you found really vulnerable during the assessment, and has that been conveyed?
Yeah, it's like that. It's just a rapid visual screening. So we have given this GMD has given some sort of shared the information with the society, and based on that, and we have taken one project for basically this buildings which are having a ground floor, this open ground storage buildings, these are more vulnerable if you're not designed properly. So it's we have done one study with this IIT Guwahati Civil Engineering Department and AEC Civil Engineering Department, and we are going for a cost-effective retrofitting solution for those buildings. So we'll be suggesting to the apartment societies that these are the things.
That's a long way to go, of course. In terms of
and in terms of a response mechanism, yeah, we have a response force ready with the fire and emergency services. There are a state disaster response force ready, and each and every fire stations, there are 10 to some places 5 to 10 people are there, so they are in search and rescue operation. They can help us in that.
Now, Mr. Ranil Kumar Das, you have been an architect for decades now, involved in a lot of projects, I'm sure, construction projects. How vulnerable are these modern day constructions, especially in Guwahati and the region that you see, especially considering that the region falls under the seismic zone 5?
Actually, if you consider modern day construction, I would say the modern day constructions are much safer, because those are almost all the structures are properly designed structures, because all the structures has to pass through a system of permission, like you have to go to a GMC permission or a GMD permission, and they have to give a soil test report and all the technical reports you have to submit, and accordingly you have to build the thing. Then after completion of the building, we have to give a completion certificate depending upon the result, the test report, what we have designed the building, and it has come up accordingly. So I would say present buildings are much safer than the buildings which were built earlier.
By earlier, what do you mean? Buildings which were probably built a decade ago or a decade and a half, or maybe more than that?
Before that, which were not designed. Well, that time when you probably they were not consulting the consultants for designing the thing. Those are the buildings mainly. So mainly you can say the buildings of 1940s or 50s or something like that, those buildings. But maybe after 60s, it is much safer buildings we are getting in Guwahati.
Much safer.
Much safer. I would say much safer.
Post the 70s, you would say?
Yeah, almost, we can say almost, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, that is something different. Otherwise, you can, if you generalize it, it will be much safer that way.
So are these, so you were trying to say that these rules are not just on papers, but being exactly followed
the consultant
on ground?
Yeah, right. They follow.
It's being followed.
It's followed by the technical person who designs the building.
Okay, and it's being ensured that these rules are followed.
Actually,
on the ground.
if the consultant, they supervise the project, it is taken care of. Otherwise, some projects, suppose it goes to a government department or any other department, the builder builds it or the government department builds it, the consultant supervisor is not taken in the consideration there. There, the consultant can't give guarantee.
Okay, I'll again come back to Professor Dwara. Professor, again, what is the reason for the high frequency of earthquakes in the Northeast, especially? You know, we have when we have it, you know, 3-4 good tremors in a month sometimes, and the frequency is very high. Probably over the last 3-4 years, it has only increased. Any specific reason for that, or it's just a random?
Yeah, what I said before, that the small earthquakes come frequently and the large earthquakes, they come at greater interval of time. So this is one of the reasons why we see this frequent earthquakes of low magnitude. And second thing, that in early times, our instruments are not sufficient to record like small magnitude earthquake, like say magnitude 3. Now we have more seismic stations which are more sensitive to record as small tremors, and we see that with the number of increase of this, the stations, the records are also increasing. So that is one of the reason. So I don't think that there is a changing trend of what happened in the past and what is happening at the present time. And one thing I should speak out is like this, that just to compare that a 7 magnitude earthquake and say 8 magnitude earthquake. Now, if you see this magnitude wise difference, 7 magnitude earthquake, if we consider 10 at a time, that magnitude level will be equivalent to 8 magnitude earthquake. Now, if you see this as the energy level, a 7 magnitude earthquake and 8 magnitude earthquake, 30 to 7 magnitude earthquake, how much energy it will release, that much energy will be released by 1 8 magnitude earthquake.
That's the kind of difference.
Yes, so that's the difference, and that is why for small earthquakes we need not have to get disturbed that something is coming, and so some sort of disaster may come up immediately. It's not like that. Of course, we see that the small earthquakes sometimes give the what we call is the foreshocks. Means if frequently they are coming in a particular area following certain pattern, so we may see that is indication that some big earthquakes may come up in the area. So that way, so you can see. But what we see that one earthquake of small magnitude occurring in near somewhere in the mid of Assam, Brahmaputra Valley, somewhere what we see in the Kokrajhar, sometimes we see in Meghalaya, right? So those doesn't indicate that those are the foreshocks of a major earthquake. So it will be, I think it's not justified if we consider that, because large number of small earthquakes are coming, and that will give us a very big earthquake.
That's not a sign as
yeah, that's so we need a proper analysis of this and how they are related, because earthquakes, big earthquakes are they occur because of the displacement along the big faults or thrust kind of thing. And if these foreshocks can be related to such kind of a big structure, then we can probably think of that these are the foreshocks of some, or indication of that a major slip is going to come, in near future. So that is a condition.
And Mr. Datta, very quickly, what are the major challenges as far as disaster management is concerned? You know, I know it's a very wide point of discussion. Very quickly, the major challenges that you face as far as an earthquake scenario is concerned.
Yeah, it's a open space constraints. I can say it's first priority in an urban agglomerations, because you see it's all the small urban agglomerations are maybe down the line 10 years it will be like Guwahati. So there is a open space scarcity there. Okay, so if there is an earthquake or something, like if there is a massive destruction, so where we will go for a alternative shelter or any makeshift arrangement for sheltering these people if there is a huge destruction. So we studied the Guwahati city. I'm just particularly mentioning about the Guwahati cities because it's having the I mean, it could have more damage.
So open space constraint is one of the We'll continue listening to those points from you. We have just to take a short break at this moment. Don't go anywhere. Lot more coming up on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching Beyond the Bytes. We're discussing earthquakes in the region, how earthquake prone is Northeast and what is the way forward. So just before going to the break, Mr. Datta from ASDMA was telling us how open space constraint is one of the major constraints as far as relief operations post an earthquake scenario is concerned. Mr. Datta, you can continue with the point that you're making.
So we have studied the Guwahati open space scarcity scenario. What may be the we released in our class also. You can check it in our website. So this is one issue. Then another issue may be the debris management. If there is, I'm talking about the post-earthquake scenario. So for that we have taken care of. We have mapped all the equipments available across the state at district level and disaster specific. So if you go to our website, you can find whoever is just having those equipments for for search and rescue as well as debris management. In terms of earthquake, in terms of any, you can scan you can search through our website this MIS system for what the equipments are available with whom, with the details, contact details. So this is one thing we are finding more challenging. And next, the interdepartmental coordination. So this is an issue, and that we are testing through our mock exercises, what we are conducting in the state. I just like to mention that Astama has conducted around 16 emergency management exercises. This is whole lot of record for the entire country. We have done 16 emergency management exercises, 2 in Guwahati and others in all the state, mostly in the district headquarters, like Barpeta, then this Dibrugarh and other places. Besides that, this is a testing tool for how prepared you are and what is the synchronization between the department. And maybe in the month of November, under the aegis of this National Disaster Management Authority, we are going to again test the mechanism for all the 33 districts all together in a single day. Okay, so this is the initial.
I would also like to know the resource constraints that you face, but before that I'll come to Mr. Ranil Das. Mr. Das, you just mentioned how buildings made today, these days, under the new rules, guidelines are much safer than what used to be probably 3-4 decades ago.
Right.
But then who keeps, is it even possible practically to keep a tab on the kind of materials used for construction? I mean, technically the authorities can give the certificate, okay, you are following on the norms, but who keeps tab of the materials used, whether enough, whether the builders, constructors are not using substandard materials which are crucial for the longevity of a building. We have had cases in the past where probably not Assam but elsewhere in the country, are newly constructed buildings, developing cracks within 2 years, and that's also happening in some corners of the region. We cannot deny that. So isn't that a big challenge? I mean, we can say that, okay, some norms are in place, some rules are in place, but who will enforce those?
Yeah, right. Actually, so there is a system and there is the regulations, and you have to abide by those things as per the GMD or GMC bylaws. So those things interval of times you have to keep giving certificates. The consultant and the builder, they have to keep giving certificates for the quality of the construction, the material which you have used. But thing is, because of the paucity of the workforce in the department, it's not possible for them to check everything. That's the main problem. So otherwise,
so is there a catch there? I'm not asking to give you to give a trade secret, but just if you can be honest, is there a catch there? I mean, are things being done properly? Probably 90% are following the norms, probably the other 10% are not, but even that becomes a casualty. One building collapse is a huge calamity if you see that way, precious lives. Even if one life is lost, it's of great value.
So when you do the any RCC construction or whatever it is, as per the laboratory test report, what you do, you are supposed to do the same thing in the site also. But at the site is not possible because there are type of sand and your gravel which you will be getting from the market, and maybe the water also. The main problem is the water. The water quality is not good. Obviously, quality of concrete will go down. So that will obviously affect the longevity of the building. But it is not going to affect the building immediately. With the longer, the life of the building will come down. Obviously.
But don't you think with the kind of construction that is going around all around Guwahati and all around the region, rapid urbanization, massive construction, it is nearly impossible to keep a tab on how they are being carried out?
It's not possible. That's true. It's not possible.
So there are chances.
Yeah, there are chances.
Okay. I'll just come back to Professor Dwara. Professor Dwara, there have been reports, talks about what we call human-induced earthquakes. Do they exist? What does it mean? What are the repercussions if they at all exist? If you could throw some light on
that. That human-induced earthquake means the earthquakes, are coming because of the human responsibility activities. So one very prominent one is this nuclear explosion. And that their damage is the earthquakes are not that much big when we test nuclear weapons, and that is why its damage is much less. And the other one, what India we have example of 1967 the Latur that earthquake. So when the reservoir is filled up, for to generate electricity and water supply and all. So then because of the load of the water, this is one point. And second point, that water is percolating through some fault. Already there are some detachment, and through which actually water percolates down, and then it becomes slippery, and then it slips, and we see the earthquakes occur. And sorry, this is not the Latur, this is a Koina earthquake. And what we see that if you see in the case of the Himalayas, so if you put the load, because Himalaya mostly its geological situation is a thrust dominating one. So where if you increase the load, so this falls actually it's dipping towards the Himalaya. So once it fill up with water, so there's load actually make the fault so more tight, and it's reduce its slipperiness, and so it's give us a better environment. So we have to understand the geology before when you have to consider about this, whether there is a possibility of reservoir-induced seismicity or not.
Now again, coming to the region, does mining, is mining also one of the reasons for that, of what you call the human-induced earthquakes? We have a lot of mining activities in the region too, we had in the past and we still have. Is that also a factor?
Yeah, actually, we do not have much of this underground mining kind of activity to great extent to generate large earthquake to give us destruction. But of course, yes, we see this oil fields. We are extracting oil, and then spore spaces are vacant spaces created below. And of course, now we have to go for this deeper wells. Then we have to pump water so that water will be filling up the pores, and that that will push up the oil. So those pore spaces which are earlier filled up by oil or gas, so those are now filled up by water. So no, that kind of big, something may happen sometimes, but no big earthquakes is expected.
Just curious to know, I may be absolutely wrong, rampant extraction of underground water, can that also cause any problems?
Yes, sometimes it's reported from
the entire city is dependent on
it's reported
underground water.
Basically on the groundwater.
Sometimes ground subsides that happen, but so far there is no record from India that some severe kind of thing happened.
Okay, coming back to you, Mr. Datta, again. There must be massive resource constraints that you are facing. I mean, Assam is a state of over 3 crore people. You may conduct, as many mock drills as you want to. But when we are talking of a disaster, God forbid,
that shouldn't happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. What are the resource constraints that we face? How well prepared or how ill prepared are we, if I may term it that way?
I will go for optimum utilization of resources. I'll take the middle path because it's I started the discussion that nothing is foolproof in that way. How much prepared you are, but basically you have seen in Japan also they have failed in somehow. Japan is a developed country and it happens. It's not their fault, but it's basically we have started from a scratch. You can say it's. Basically we have started because the disaster management is just after that tsunami and this super cyclone in Orissa it started with, but basically now things are coming up. Now people are a bit aware. What we have find in the in the last decade, it's people are now a bit curious about just taking their own safety, and children are coming up. They are much aware of the things. So just we have to, refresh button on so that people are aware of that. So for these things, we are going for this. You are talking about the built environment, so I am just focusing on the built environment because there are lots of multi-storied building coming up, not in Guwahati, but other 6 or 7 agglomerations across the state. So what we have done, we have touched around 600 apartment buildings in Guwahati city. We have done the do's and don'ts. We have just awared them about these are the vulnerability you are living with. Next, we just there are 2 sort of mitigation measures you can take. One is non-structural, one is structural. A building basically is you can take it like 60-40. The building cost is 60 and whatever inside, or 70-30 you can say, whatever inside valuable things, whatever you are in that. So if you can save your this non-structural things like your whatever furnishings and other things you are having, electronics, gadgets and all. So how you can fix out that things? This is one issue. And we are also giving this print media ad.
Is that a possibility? Can that be done?
That can be done.
Save?
That can be done. You can.
Would you like to throw some light on that? I'm sure our viewers will be very interested.
Yeah. Nowadays you can actually fix your all the falling objects. What will happen in the earthquake? First, every time the building is not collapsing because of the falling objects, you are being injured. So we have to take precautions inside the house, and we must know that the falling objects have been fixed. Whatever, it may either topple, it may either fall. So we have to fix that. Other than the fix, fridge and all. Okay, so fridge you have to don't go for clamping of the fridge because this is you will other way make its damage. Other way you can clamp with only a 5 or 6 rupee L clamp. You can fix up the cupboards and other things, because whenever we are going for just furnishing our flats, we are never ensured that these are all fixed in the walls. This may be just a floating object. So your building is not collapsed, but all the falling objects are falling on you. So this is an issue you have to think of for non-structural mitigation measures, because I again mentioned that mitigation because you can't prevent earthquake, but you can mitigate. You can reduce the impact of earthquake. So this is an issue. For in case in terms of hospitals also, the thing is different. The cost of building is less than the equipments they are inside the hospitals. So they have to fix up the things just to reduce the cost of damage. I just
Mr.
want to share
Ranil
it.
Kumar Das,
If
yeah,
you don't mind.
yeah, go ahead. Go
Please,
ahead.
Can I
please.
continue with this?
Yes, absolutely.
I'll
Go
ask
ahead.
him one more thing.
Yeah.
Like suppose, God forbid, it happens.
Yeah, yeah.
Major earthquake. So there's lack of open space here.
Absolutely, I was coming to that. Lack
Yeah,
of open
local
spaces, that's a
gap.
major constraint all the projects are facing.
Right.
I was just about to ask you, the lack of spaces, I mean, buildings.
Exactly,
you know,
we are just
housing
fed up
complex
with
in
Right, right.
Guwahati, don't have
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
There's just enough space. So building, you have the road, you have the electricity poles, it's all haphazard.
All haphazard,
So how
yeah.
optimistic we may sound, there is a grim picture out there. Would you agree?
Yeah, we agree.
But in that case, what will happen? The people generally, the open space which you are having, it is your school open field, your stadiums or whatever it is, those are the places you have to accommodate the people there. Again,
That can come later.
That will come later, no?
That can come
That-
later. What I'm
later.
trying to say is that
Uh-huh.
there's a grim picture out
Grim
there.
out there.
Are we acknowledging it or not? And what is the way forward, Mr. Datta? If you can come in here.
Yeah. You have to aware that you are now living in a vertical scenario, not in a horizontal thing. We are all living. I myself is living in a apartment building. I think most of us in a city dwellers are either living in a vertical things, maybe first story, second story, or maybe fifth story. So if we have to think that we are living in a vertical building, so we have to think of how we have to take precautions during an earthquake. People are. Your building is not collapsed, but you are making yourself more vulnerable just coming out or vacating
Panic.
things. So panic.
There's a lot of
First
panic.
of all, we are just we are just addressing the issue that be calm and think of how you have to plan yourself whenever which room you are staying. Where is the safe place you can stay? Okay, you can't use the lift, you can't use the staircase, and whenever you are coming outside. So you are vulnerable to
Again
this,
exposed,
electric post, then the
Absolutely.
signboards, all the hoardings and all these things. So you are making yourself more vulnerable. So why not stay inside the house and take precautions for that? Okay, so wherever you are safe in that. So this is one thing. And for open space, the discussion just rotating around that thing. Open space, I am just mentioning about in the post-earthquake scenario, because if there is a mega earthquake like as Professor is talking about, if it is beyond 8 Richter scale or something like, so there may be a devastation. We haven't seen it. But we have seen it 1950. That time there is a few.
And why only that? Why go back to 1897 or 1950? We had Sikkim, we had Manipur,
Yeah, we had
Nepal, which is not far away, and a lot of devastation.
And the magnitudes are
we
also
will-
not that much.
Yes, we will.
It's a shallow
In
earthquake.
fact, we will take more questions on that from Professor Dwara. But before that, a very small break. Don't go anywhere. Lots more coming up on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching Beyond the Bites. We're discussing earthquakes in the region. The region is very prone to earthquakes. What is the way forward? What are the measures that can be taken to mitigate the disasters thereafter? I'll come back to you, Professor Dwara. As you mentioned right at the beginning of the show, that the Indian plate, of course, his tectonic plate is slowly going underneath the Eurasian. So what could be the implications? Does this make the Himalayan belt and the Northeast more prone to earthquakes? Is that what it means?
Yeah, actually, what we see that Indian plate is being subducted below this Eurasian plate as well as this Burmese plate. Now, when this subduction takes place, we see that below this, Himalaya, so we see that it is moving at a very low angle. is going in low angle, and as a result, so there is more friction. Continent collision is already there, and because it's a low angle, so we see that near surface earthquakes are very common. And then when earthquake occur in a particular place, from there energy dissipate, so it spreads around. And if during that course, when the earthquake waves are moving, so the crust will absorb a major part of the energy. Now, if this earthquake is occurring at 30-kilometer depth, then most of the energy will be absorbed, and a little amount of energy will be coming and reaching the surface. Now, if an earthquake is occurring at the 10-kilometer depth, so a large amount of energy will be coming up to the surface because absorption will limited. And in that case, we see the severe earthquake. So in case of the Himalaya, we see the low angle thrust conditions are there, and that is why we see that the Himalaya is more vulnerable. Now, if you're coming to this, Myanmar side, this Manipur, Nagaland, that side, there, the plate subducted plate is at a much deeper, steeper angle. It's something around 35 to 40 degree angle. They're dipping like this, and as a result, so we see only the the earthquakes. Okay, we may get it of different conditions, but we see the large number of deep earthquakes occur, and those earthquakes magnitude are slow because the friction is less, and that is the situation we have. Now, another aspect, what we see, that Indian plate is actually being subducted at the rate of 5.5 centimeter per year below this Eurasian plate. And what is being estimated that approximately this is a 4 to 4.5 meter subduction may lead to the, because when the plate is being subducted, all the time the earthquakes are not coming. So when it goes, it's pressing this strain, energy built up condition is going on, and it is this built up energy is released in the term of the earthquake. Now, for a long time, say, no major earthquakes coming, so plate is being subducted, so energy is accumulating, and after, say, some period, it's estimated that around for 4 meter to 4.5 meter, or maybe something more than that. So if that much of subduction occur, and in Himalayan situation, so you may expect earthquake of magnitude 8 or so. That is the situation. And now, if frequently some other earthquakes are coming in the region of low intensity, say 6 magnitude earthquake is coming, 6.5 magnitude earthquake coming, so they are releasing the energy. So, but as I tell you that say 6 magnitude and 7 magnitude, if you see energy condition, there is a difference of 32, and magnitude there is a difference of 10. So, that 6 magnitude 10 earthquake comes, so 7 magnitude earthquake energy will be released. So that kind of situation is there, so we have to do that kind of estimation, and then we can say that, okay, there is a possibility of occurrence of a major earthquake. Sometimes we see that earthquake should come as per estimation that after, say, 50 years, when the energy is being released, and you see that the earthquake is delayed. It's not coming at 50 years, maybe it may come up at 70 years or 80 years or so. So these things are actually general people don't know, and that is why they become panic out of it.
Okay. So some good points there. I'll come back to you, Mr. Datta. The city and the region has been witness, to a lot of earthquakes. Recently, if you remember, 2016, in the month of April, we had two quite big tremors. One crossing 6.3 in the Richter scale, another a bit below that. But there's a lot of panic. Even now, if just a week back, there was a 5.3 Richter scale earthquake that hit Assam and the rest of the region. The first thing that we see is people immediately running out to the streets. So there is a complete lack of awareness, that is certain. How can that be addressed? Is there enough resource to address that issue? Because nothing seems to be changing. People are still running out of their houses despite whatever you just said. It's just the opposite. Don't use the lift. Okay, nobody maybe using the lift, but they're running to the stairs.
Yeah.
And not all constructions have, wide staircases, as we know, multiple staircases. Such norms are not followed by everyone, and it's in cases like these that injuries happen.
Yes.
But it's happening again and again. So a complete lack of awareness there, you would say, and how to address this?
Yeah, you can't say it's a lack of awareness, because it's at that instant of time, maybe how I will perform depends on the mindset of the people.
Absolutely.
So people in the urban areas, I think people are now aware. Maybe in the remote places, people may not be aware, but they are less
Less
vulnerable.
Less
But
vulnerable.
we in the urban localities are more vulnerable, and we know the fact that we shouldn't use the things. We shouldn't just run and leave the place. But at the nick of the moment, it's happened. So there is a ritualistic practicing of just you have to synchronize your mind that I will not do that thing. So we have no other option but just to go for ad and all these things repeatedly do have, but just to hammer the things repeatedly in schools, colleges, and we are trying our best to do it. We are going for a news ticker, we are going for radio jingles, we are going for this print media things. Whatever platform we get, like this platform I am using for do's and don'ts, basically it's how to go for how to aware people that what should they do in that way. Still it's in the mind. You have to, at that instant you never know how you'll be reacting.
No resources for selecting vulnerable zones and maybe door-to-door campaigns. Is that possible?
Door-to-door campaign, as I have just shared, with 600 apartment in Guwahati city, we have covered in last 2-3 years, and this time we are going to other urban agglomerations like that's Dibrugarh, Silchar, then Tinsukia, Nagaon, and Tinsukia, Nagaon, and some other place I just forgot about. We are going for 30 apartment buildings, because there is not so many apartment buildings in that, but we are targeting 30 apartment buildings in all the things. Three district headquarters it's been done, and other we are touching up. So this is one thing we are doing in that things, and we are going to the school. We are having a last year we couldn't do that school awareness campaign. We are having a great Assam Shakeout program for the schools. It's a mock drill on near if it is nearby 15th August, just to commemorate that 1950 earthquake on 15th August. So we have done this 3 times in the last years, 3 years consecutively, with some 100 schools, then 30 schools. Like that, we are just touching the schools so that the students are the mass disseminator of this.
You're trying hard. Mr. Das, very quickly, a technical question here. Which is the safest part of your house during an earthquake? There are so many theories about that. You have any? The safest part of your house when it's a tremor being felt, where should people rush to within that house?
As a technical person, I never move out my house. I always stay inside the house because I know all the do's and don'ts.
But you have to be sure that your house
is safe enough.
Safe
enough. That you have to be sure. But the message the people used to say, like my grandmother used to say, no, always go under the table or under the bed or whatever. That I don't know. But thing is, it is always safer to be below the door frame or something like that. That's also.
Can I just chip in?
Yes, please.
Get it.
The first thing is, if you are staying in a multi-storied building, and if it is an RCC building, beam column joint is the best place where you can say. But there is a condition. It should not be the outer wall. It should be the inside wall. Inner wall. Inside inner portion. Because if you are standing in the outside wall in a beam column junction, when there is a lateral shaking, you will be just moving apart, because the walls are non-structural members, and you will just will be moving first. So you'll be just pushing apart from the building. So that should be, if you are standing in the beam column joint, that should be inside. Maybe the corner of the building wall is a safe place, but that should be also the inside. I just want to add.
Professor Barua, as long as the disaster doesn't come, as long as that big earthquake, big jolt doesn't come, we pretend, though we are apprehensive, but we still pretend that it's never going to come. You know, that's how that's the psyche, as a human psyche. But if we see, let's not go as back as 1897 or 1950, what happened in the region. Let's you know, go back to the recent, if I can call that recent, though it's almost a good 6-7 years, the disaster in Sikkim.
Yes.
Then we had Manipur. You know,
18 September 2011.
11, yeah. And then followed by Manipur in 2016.
2016.
Worrying signs, and this says that this disaster, God forbid, can strike any time.
You see that we cannot forecast, you know, earthquake to a level of certain dates or even months or years. So we have to prepare ourselves. But one thing we should confess, and we are fortunate in that way, that our buildings and the built-up environments are much better than the other parts of India. You know, it's like Gujarat situation. What happened, right? If that earthquake come over here, so we would not have that much of damage. That is one point. And another point, you know,
is it because the region is more prone to earthquakes, so people are more careful?
I just want to share that it's our engineers are much aware that we are in a zone 5. So whenever we are designing, basically being an engineer, I just want to support this architect also with us. So we are aware that we are in zone 5, and we are always taking care of that our buildings are more or less this earthquake resistant. So you will find some cracks or something like in the buildings, but no major. God forbid it shouldn't happen. We haven't tested for a big earthquake, but it's
actually what happened. No, the non-structural members would say that actually we see the walls there is crack. No, and
what is a non-structural?
the people are reporting that there is damage of earthquake damage. That is not the structural damage, and that was not taken care of by the designers, because the building should be safe. So building is by the columns and the beam, right?
Column, beam, slab, and foundation.
Slabs and foundation. So that part they take care of. And the other parts, that may not work properly. And then it's not what we can say is a design failure. We cannot say it like that.
With the infill material.
Yeah. So it is not a design failure.
Mainly you have to see the column, beam, slabs, and foundation. That has to be perfect.
If there is a crack in the column, beams, and foundation, we have to go to the structural engineer and take his advice.
It can be retrofitted also.
One point I just want to mention here, sometimes I see the people make confusion out of it. That like we say the 7 magnitude earthquake, right? Now, say earthquakes of 7 magnitude occurring somewhere, say in Sikkim, so it's far away from us. So here, how much is the ground acceleration? Because ground acceleration and the peak ground velocity, that will define how much is the safety level of my how much damage it may create over here. So it's far away, so it will not be doing much damage to us. Even the deep focus one, maybe 8 magnitude earthquake occurring at a very deep condition, say 70 kilometer or 80 kilometer deep, and that will not damage. Even if some epicenter is very close to, say, Guwahati, then that will not give us more damage. So these are the conditions, actually, where, at what depth, and at how far from a place, the epicenter is located.
These are the technical aspects. Very quickly.
Soil
conditions is also another
very quickly,
aspect.
I'll take this last question from you, and we are just falling short of time. Is increasing urbanization also contributing to the earthquake risk? Is there any relation?
Which one?
Increasing urbanization, rampant urbanization. Is there any link? I mean, there are several studies which have said that, but is there any real link, or it's just a myth?
What I said is, there was more load is there. Sometimes there may be slips that happen. What we see, there's a building, a house in the hilltop, right? Sometimes landslides occur because of the load and that kind of thing.
Matter altogether.
So it's not of when we talk about the earthquakes, basically we are more concerned about the tectonic earthquakes.
Okay. And Mr. Datta, we are really falling short of time. Last question from you. How is the coordination between the state disaster management authorities and at the national level? Because an earthquake doesn't come alone. In the aftermath, God forbid, there are a lot of things like landslides, rivers changing courses, and you need more resources to tackle that, and it is very important for coordination between the state and at the national levels to get in extra additional resources. So how is the coordination, and can people rest assured with that?
Yeah, we have we have a regular coordination with this NDMA. You are talking about the National Disaster
Yes.
Management Authority. Yeah, we are in touch with that, and this coming mock drill, NDMA, it's an NDMA initiative for the whole state. We are going to go for a huge mega exercise for this part of Northeast. So we are with NDMA in supporting. NDMA is really backing us in that. But after all, it's we have to we have to increase our capacity also. Handholding is a good thing, but we are trying to build up our own capacity so that the state can face on their own. Resource crunch is an issue, but yes, always the central help is there, and we have to think of how to make our built environment safe. That is an issue. We have to think together.
If I can wrap this up, nobody can control the movement of the tectonic plates. We can just hope that they behave fine so that there are no tremors. But of course, the disaster management authorities can do much more, and they're trying their best to mitigate the damages. And of course, we just hope that our constructors, designers do their best design so that we are kept safe. On that note, we bid goodbye to you today. Do join us for the same time next week for yet another episode of Beyond the Bytes.